Okay. It's now my pleasure to welcome Maria Torres and Mary Ellen Wright as our evocateurs this morning. And Maria and Mary Ellen, I turn it over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I think Mary Ellen is going to start us off.
Yes, I am. I don't know if you can see this because of the virtual background, but I have a symbol on my head to begin us off. And if, I don't know if we can see this. Okay. If anyone doesn't recognize the symbol of Mickey Mouse ears, could you, to be culturally aware, could you just send me a private chat that you don't, and I will change a little of the language that I'm going to use in this analogy. What we've been asked to do this morning is to ask you, what does a thriving organization committed to caring as its guiding values look like? And what are people doing, thinking, feeling, and aspiring toward? And when I read that question, I realized it was asking us to imagine. To imagine makes me think of Walt Disney. Walt Disney began with a drawing of a mouse, and people wanted to buy that mouse from him and use it for all kinds of other purposes, but he held on to it because he imagined and he imaged and he innovated to create this entire really image of imagination, happiness, joy, innovation. And so he began with just this drawing. And today I saw smiles as soon as you realized that I had Mickey Mouse ears on my head, because it seems kind of shocking. You wouldn't expect that for me to have Mickey Mouse ears on the Anne Boykin Academy and this group of wonderful scholars and theorists and leaders. But if I was in the middle of Disney World, you would almost expect it of me. In the middle of Disney World, everyone wears mouse ears as an expression of the joy of being there, acknowledging the imagination, the feelings, the expression of joy. So the second part of the question that we're addressing today is what would it be like to be, for people to be in that type of caring organization? How is it seen or felt or experienced? And it can be experienced in many different ways. It can be experienced and expressed in many different expressions. There can be different people in the circle, and their expressions may look very different. Different things may speak to them. Different images, different feelings, different clusters of people. So as we go into this session, we're asking all of us to express from a strength-based approach, from a positive expression of caring, imagine and innovate. What would an organization committed to caring look like? And you may, in your expression, give exemplars of when you have experienced this or seen it. You may be at the mouse drawing phase, or you may actually take it all the way to international worlds. So as we go through this journey together this morning, we are open to innovation, imagination, at whatever place it is on the continuum of living caring. So with that in mind, I'd like to open it up for people to share their imagination and their image of caring.
This is Melissa. I guess I'll start. As you were talking, I was thinking, boy, my answer today is much different than a year and a half ago. So I, because I think we're restarting everything again. During the pandemic, I think the caring was ensuring that the staff was safe, ensuring that they felt they had what they needed to do their job, ensuring that we would listen to them and hear their concerns and support them by lots of communication. And so I know one thing I did was weekly forums on the Zoom to make sure that we could all talk together and besides going places individually. So I think caring, and now what I'm doing today is trying to rebuild the nursing community, because it looks different now, because so many nurses left to travel and the team was disrupted. And so, but I did see a lot of caring, and I saw a lot of caring for each other with the nurses, and that was really phenomenal.
Thank you. That thought of how this year has changed how expressions of caring were lived. Thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to share?
Mary Ellen, if I might invite the students who are with us and part of the community to contribute your thoughts this morning.
I'll speak, Kathleen. This is Kathleen Capo. And as a student, I think FAU really supported the students. I mean, they were sending out COVID, ways to care for yourself. And I took that and I disseminated here at the college here, and just ways of being, at home, and learning, meditation websites, just a lot of self-care that was really helpful to my community here and myself. As a employee of South Florida State College, our leader, she had forums, Zoom forums with the division, the dean, and you can feel the caring, the love. She let every person speak, like we're dialoguing here. And this is how her leadership has role model for me. And I see it here at the Ann Boykin. And I think it's important that we all carry on these dialogues even after COVID. And I think we've come together as a community and really have shared our courage, what we needed to express, and the way that we are being with, even though we had to be without each other. So that connectivity was great to have during that time. And so I'm very thankful and appreciative for my leadership here. And as a student, I think FAU really reached out. I know my chairs in my comms committee and my dissertation committee have been just wonderful in knowing that I was safe and that I was being cared for. So I thank them as well. Thank you.
I was thinking about how nursing was highlighted during the COVID process, and how there would be stories all the time on TV about the work, fairly close-up stories. And I think that the dignity and the challenge and complexity of nursing work was highlighted. And I just was thinking about a provost I worked with who said to me one day, why would people do that work? And I thought, boy, I didn't read you wrong for years. And that sort of shows you that there's a schism there, but I think some of that has been changed because of the witnessing of what nurses do close up with people who could get into ICUs with cameras the way they did. And some of the images of nurses standing, being on the floor outside a room, gathering him or herself to go forward. So I was just thinking about the dignity of what we do and the value of it. And one of my daughters is a nurse, so I hear a lot from her.
I would like to share a little bit about my journey with caring. This is Barbara Goff. I'm from Notre Dame, Maryland University. I didn't speak too much yesterday, but I did want to speak up on this. One of the I've been a nurse for 30 some years, and one of the reasons I left bedside nursing was because I couldn't be the kind of nurse I wanted to be. I couldn't be my authentic self. I couldn't give the kind of care that I wanted to be and wanted to do. That was even in the critical care arena, I still felt like I was not able to do that. So I left bedside. And, I went back to school, and I'd like to tell a little story about my journey. So I was a clinical instructor, and I was fresh out of critical care. And I look back now and I think about the kind of instructor I was, and it was all about, being on time and, getting your work in and, getting your meds out. And then I learned a lot from different people, went back to school, and I would like to tell this story, Mary, I hope you don't mind, but I went back to school for my master's in 2010, and I just lost my mom. And I remember just being a little bit of a mess that evening. And it was our very first class with our cohort. And the professor, I guess she sensed something in me and asked me, are you all right? And I just sort of poured my heart out to her and, said, my mom only went to the 7th grade and, she left me money, so I'm going back to get my master's. And she said, let's come have a cup of tea. Let's have a cup of tea. And she made me a cup of tea. And this was right before our 4-hour class. And this was Dr. Mary Packard. And to this day, that touched me in such a way. I really think that act of caring opened up my heart and allowed me to receive what she was going to teach me. And so I would say from that moment on, I really opened up my mind, my heart, and looked at caring for students in a different way. So, I've taught all different levels, CNAs to, masters prepared. And one of the last jobs I had before this was teaching in a workplace development center where I worked with women that were vulnerable. They were learning to be a CNA, and I was teaching them how to be a CNA. And, they were late. They would come in without uniforms, and, the language that would come out of their mouth and all of these things. And the workplace development center was run by sisters, school sisters of Notre Dame. And I learned so much from them, but I started to stop that way I was being with students. For example, if someone came in late, first thing I would say out of their mouth is, are you okay? And because sometimes I would find out that they were late because they were evicted from their apartment, or they came in with their uniform. They didn't have their uniform, and I would find out their boyfriend beat them up and they had to flee, and they weren't able to get back into their apartment, so they didn't have a uniform on. So my heart just melted for these ladies. And it made me think about our conversations we had yesterday, where just, someone was given an example of, they stopped on the side of the road to help someone, and then they got to work and it was all about, why were you late? So over my journey, I've become, obviously more caring, and I try to live caring in my work that I do on a daily basis. And it can be a simple thing like checking in with my small staff every morning. How are you doing? You doing okay? What's on your plate today? What do you hope to accomplish? To a very simple thing like doing an affirmation before the students do their validations. They come in and they're very nervous. So I'll take them aside and we'll do an affirmation together and we'll send them on their way. So I have just become a lifelong student of living caring. And this conference has really helped again, to open up my heart and have a look at what I'm doing and what more can be done to, to practice caring. And the other piece, not just students, is caring for nurses that are on the front line. And, hearing you speak about the pandemic and some of the things that you all have gone through. I was on the front line for a little bit before I came here. I was working with Genesis and teaching CNAs there. But I just feel like we should be doing things like bringing a coffee cart down the aisle and, making people go on their breaks. And hey, you have you been for your 30-minute massage yet? You've got to go talk to the cat. I just feel like there's so many things that we can be doing for our staff nurses instead of making sure they get a pee break, or a lunch break, making sure they get those things. To me, that is just one of the reasons I left. You weren't even able to care for yourself. So my mind is going there as well. So thank you for the opportunity for me to be here. I'm learning so much from all of you.
Thank you, Barb, for that. I just wanted to mention one thing I implemented I'm a PhD student as well as faculty, is we start our classes, our Zoom class, because of the pandemic, with self-care. That I feel that everybody has an imagination, everybody has creativity, and we always start with, okay, so what did you do this week for self-care? And after, at first I thought, oh, this isn't going to go over well. They're going to go, ah. But all of a sudden, the students were bringing pictures that they drew and painted. And it just brought us together, and that everybody was taking care of themselves. And that taking care of self is so vital, that self-care. So why can't that be brought into an organization? What did you do for self-care this week? You have to sit and think. And I would talk to them about, I made a really great meal. It was the first time I made Indian food. Or I just planted a pot of flowers out in the garden. But we all would contribute, and I think it was freeing, and knowing that it's okay. You're a busy student, you're a busy nurse, you're a busy person. So I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you so much. These are beautiful stories, really wonderful exemplars. In the chat, there's some interesting questions. Nancy France asked, it's been mentioned how nurses left institutions and went to travel nursing. Have we asked why?
Money. They could earn their whole year's salary in less than 3 months. So it was very, very enticing. And the rates during the pandemic, how people try to gas gouge during the hurricane? Well, that's what the companies did during the pandemic. So if their usual rates were $70, they were over 200 and something that they were asking an hour for us to pay. So it was a big money thing. And I was hoping that as the state winds down and looks at things that could be different in the future, I was hoping that is one of them they look at. But I did want to say to Barb, thank you for sharing. And, you know, one of the things that we have is shared leadership councils, and one of them is a Healthy Work Environment Council. These are councils run and chaired by nurses, and they do a lot of great things for each other because they're the ones that come up with ideas and they implement them. So one of the things was they asked if they could have massage chairs for every nurses lounge. So we did that, and they'll go around with chamomile tea and cookies to all the floors, or they'll do lemonade and something. And, you know, they do take care of each other. And I love it because it's nurses taking care of nurses, and everything is, you know, that they come up with is for themselves. So we do have that.
I would like to respond to Barb. Mary Packard here. I'm so humbled by your words, Barb. And I can remember back to those years, and I know that must be over 10 years ago.
Mhm. Yes.
We were young and fresh. Well, maybe. So I'm very humbled by your words, and I'm also so grateful for your colleagueship now. The part of the story that Barb didn't tell is that she has done a lot of teaching, and she and I co-taught a graduate course together, curriculum grounded in caring. And her steadfast devotion to caring science is really exemplary. And so now we enjoy her colleagueship as director of the Center for Caring with Technology. And I can just attest to the fact that she keeps caring at the very forefront. It's so easy to let that slide by, like our simulation labs and skills labs and so forth are in the Center for Caring with Technology. And it has slipped from being called Center for Caring with Technology to being called the simulation labs. But Barb keeps that front and center, which I think that language being present is so very important. So thank you, Barb, for sharing that.
Thank you, Mary.
Good morning, everyone. Two things I'd like to share. Yesterday, we spent a considerable amount of time also talking about the support for leaders and nurse leaders specifically. So I recall very distinctly last year, our Chief Nurse Council, which comprises 14 chief nurses and about 6 members of my team, we historically would meet once a month. And the pandemic brought that to a screeching halt. So imagine the excitement when finally, after the peak of July and August, we actually started planning for an in-person meeting. And that was risky and that was scary, but we had a venue that we could actually consider bringing everybody together in one large room. And so there was a lot of excitement about being able to see each other, never mind that we were seeing each other on conference calls multiple times a day. But the caring that came through at that meeting, because I knew since it had been so many months that we had all been together, that we wanted to do something special. And I knew that there was some type of gift, you know, to just begin to express gratitude, although there is no way to express the true gratitude, the depth of the gratitude that we feel for everything that everyone did last year. And so I want to give Joe credit, Joe St. Jean, because as our team brainstormed, what do we want to do? How do we make this meeting special? He came up with the idea of orchids. Now, mind you, it's the middle of the pandemic. Florists are not delivering flowers. Flowers were growing. So again, the power of we working together, our team set out. And it was a surprise. We didn't tell the chief nurses anything. We got to the conference room really super early. And we set out our gifts and our flowers. And oh my goodness, when everyone walked into the room, the element of surprise. But it was more than just the element of surprise. It was the caring and appreciation in that small token of appreciation, which again was beautiful because it was something alive. And everyone has dealt with so much death during this pandemic that I just wanted to share that with you all, that sometimes in the smallest ways, we can really express gratitude, appreciation, and nourish a soul, as somebody was mentioning in the chat. And then as I was preparing to be on this planning committee, thank you, Terry, for the voluminous amount of articles and materials. I have a whole file of articles, and I see all the smiles on our gallery here. But it was important to do that preparation. So one of the pieces of work that we looked at, thank you, Dr. Boykin and Dr. Schoenhofer, because it's Nursing as Caring, a model for transforming practice. And it piqued my interest because I'm in the business of caring for leaders. I care for everyone, but it has a special meaning for me. And so on page 27, I ran into an exercise that they wrote about, which was really about a reflection on the most beautiful nursing that you have ever done. And, we're emerging from the pandemic. We still have patients in our buildings. I kind of did a mini retreat with our team, and I decided, you know what, let me test this out. What if? So our small team engaged in this reflection. How powerful. There were tears in the room because all of us, even though we were human doings, we're also human beings. And again, thank you, Dr. Boykin and Dr. Schoenhofer, for even putting this in writing this many years ago. And then I took that. It worked out so well because we connected to each other as humans and then as nurses. And I said, well, what about a broader audience? So we did this same exercise with our assistant chief nurses, with a larger group. There were 8. And then the next was taking that exercise, and we did it virtually with our med-surg tele and critical care directors. And if you'll just give me 2 more minutes, I just want to read the one paragraph that was so impactful. You are invited to enter a quiet, contemplative inner space. Allow the attentions and distractions of the moment to recede as you create quietude. Now bring to life the most beautiful nursing you have ever done. Recall that precious instance that stands out for you as truly nursing. Savor the fullness of that experience. Explore the meaning of this wonderful experience of nursing. And that simple little paragraph, we put everyone into breakout sessions, and the feedback that we got from being able to facilitate that was tremendous. And I think it was definitely important to acknowledge what has happened in 2020 and really reconnecting us with why we're here. So thank you for allowing me these minutes to share.
So I see quite a few hands raised. So I'm trying to catch up with where to start. I think Jalma, you had your hands raised up first. So you want to talk?
Yeah, thank you. This is wonderful. Another wonderful day with wonderful music. I am struck by the word commitment because, and I'm not quite sure how to say this, but there's an old saying or a joke about, if something happens in the woods and there's nobody there, did it really happen? And what do you do? Can you really say, what do you do when there's nobody looking? And commitment to me is about what do you do when nobody's looking, or when there's no real, like, the last few years, it has been so difficult for so many people, for almost all of us in many, many ways, that it kind of forced us to look at very different and innovative ways, as Mary has described, and not just innovation, but because we couldn't touch people, we couldn't be in their actual physical presence, people got very imaginative and innovative and creative. And I know that sometimes, at least for me, sometimes I need a 2x4 hitting me at the back of the head before I notice something. I'm getting better at not needing such a big 2x4, which is much nicer for me and for everybody else. But I wonder how we can, and this goes to sustainability and commitment. When you commit yourself to being that person that no matter whether someone's looking or watching you, you operate in a way that is a sharing of self, that shows that caring, those that can be experienced by your senses. And I think that what I'm hearing from everybody is that in some way, the creation of an opportunity for togetherness, for connection, for needs to be met, for people being with other people, not just being with your patients, but being with each other, and how you create that community. And with that intention of being a co-creative participant, which I think is an important aspect of who we are. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to speak as much as I do or be the quietest person in the room, but every one of us, just by virtue of our energy, and those of us who have come here for these last 2 days, we are exactly the right people that were supposed to be here, to bring all of our energy, all of who we are together to make a big difference. And I am very thankful, and I am committed. I am recommitted to really focusing on who I am and how I can be the best person that comes from a place of honoring myself with values that make sense. How do I care for myself so that I can be available to care for others? And I think that that's an important piece. I just want one little story. One of the experiences that I had, I left nursing for 25 years. I ran a retail store. I couldn't find a place for me. Just like Barb said, I couldn't find a place for me. And nursing wasn't doing it. Healthcare wasn't doing it. I even tried teaching. And at that particular point, it didn't work either. I had faculty who were constantly, it felt competitive all the time. It was difficult. And then I left. And it took me 25 years going through all my experiences to find places and people that I felt together with, until I was introduced to the AHNA organization. And I went to a conference in New Hampshire, the very first one, because someone told me it would be a good idea for me to go. And I went. I knew no one in the room. It was such an experience of being invited in. When you're new to a place, to be invited in just by virtue of people coming up to you and saying, I have a seat next to me. You look like you were lost. And most often I was, because I didn't know what was going. I'd never been to a convention, a conference that looked like this and felt like this. It was a feeling of home. And I think in some way, how do you create, like when you're trying to sell your home, you bake cookies and you leave bread on the counter so that people coming in will see it as a place where they want to live. Well, whatever the way we can create, bake cookies and have the smell of baking bread and home is really what we're trying, I think what we're talking about. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you very much, Dalma. And Anne, I see you have your hand raised.
Good morning, everybody. Sylvia, I just want to thank you for that beautiful story. I jotted down some little thoughts as you were speaking. But one of the questions for your group, for our group this morning was, what does a thriving organization committed to caring as its guiding values look like? And your story was an exquisite exemplar of what it looks like. You know, you began by kind of just talking about Terry and, you know, throwing your hands up about all the reading that you had to do. And I think that's such an important point, because the transition from understanding caring as kind of an emotion versus that substantive base that you got through the reading, that you took the part of something you read and shared it with your colleagues. And that reflected to me, that reflects what you valued. It reflected how you honored, you know, nursing. So I think that the power of the stories that you share, the power of story, not only helps us connect, as you said, because it does do that, but it also helps us to understand how we each live our caring uniquely in our nursing, and how beautiful that is, and how we need to celebrate that. So I just think it was very powerful what you said, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Anne. And Mary, you wanted to talk a bit about the summarizing some of the points that were coming up?
Well, I've been taking notes and I thought maybe if we go back, maybe we can spring forward what a vision using these ideas looks like. How would we implement these ideas? Who would we invite in the circle? How do we start that communication? So what we've heard so far is being with people in a different way, witnessing what nurses do. The world witnessed that, as Zane brought up, and the dignity of what we do. And couldn't be the kind of nurse I want to be. Where do we hear that, and how do we honor that? Growth in being authentic and encouraging people to be authentic. Creating a nursing council to have inform interventions in the organization. Starting a Zoom class with self-care. Understanding why nurses have left nursing. Having a shared leadership council. Keeping the language of caring from the simulation lab to using the language of caring. Show appreciation. Caring for the leaders. Self-care. Commitment. Reflection is a powerful tool. Opportunity for connection. Understanding finances is part of self-care. Couldn't find a place for me. Allowing a place for others. And the substance base of reading and valuing the science, the development of understanding. Asking the question, what if? That's what's been expressed so far, and I think that question is, what if? How do we envision and embody these things? Who do we invite? And maybe we could begin our conversation, continue our conversation with that in mind.
I think another question we could ask is, what makes the nurses stay? We've heard a lot about what makes them leave. You know, the money. You know, they can't be the kind of nurse they want to be. You know, patient-nurse ratio, whatever the reason. But I think we may need to explore a little more why do nurses stay? What makes them stay? And whatever makes them stay, we should be doing more of. So unless it's like fear of, I would like to hear things like the camaraderie or the leadership cares for us, whatever, those kind of things that would make nurses stay.
I would also like to hear from, in this group, do we have any students going into the bedside or folks that are still at the bedside and what their feelings were? I mean, as a leader in a very large facility, we lost, even though there were a lot of components in place for caring and supporting nursing, as well as the rest of all the people that contribute to the care of the patient in the hospital, we still lost a good 50% of the staff to travel. And though we are seeing people coming back, and I did notice in the note something, it's very true. The nurses left because of the opportunity to make a large amount of money in a very short period of time, but they liked the idea that home was still there and that they could go and come back. Now, it took a lot of strength within the nursing leadership to accept that we were going to try to bring our staff back, our associates back, because a lot of them left with very little notice. And I'm sure any CNOs out there know that they just suddenly left. And there was we had a lot of discussing amongst the leadership to who could we bring them back and should we bring them back? And that's still a big debate within different facilities of how do you receive back and welcome back associates that did leave for the money opportunity, and what part of caring does that reflect? Because there's so many questions that come up about loyalty and how are the staff that did stay, how are they going to receive the ones that come back? So the facility I'm at did a lot of things and listened a lot to the staff during the height of the crisis with COVID. And one of the things that the staff kept saying is they needed a safe or quiet zone within the hospital that they could get away from their unit and sort of shut off everything that was coming at them. So we did choose to put together a tranquility area within the hospital, off the floors. It was downstairs. There's several rooms. There was virtual. There were videos, comfortable chairs. I did catch what Melissa said about getting the massage chairs on the floor. That sounds like fun too. But we had them down in these several rooms. There was a counseling room. You could schedule time with either a spiritual counselor or a health support counselor. You could have group sessions down there, but it was put in place because the associates within the hospital said we need this, and every employee in the hospital is encouraged to go and take a break and get away from the floor and go there, and they had been. It took a lot from the executive team and the HR team to come around to see that. There was always concerns about still the spread of COVID and how do you keep the area clean. But I think, but even with the listening to associates, people did leave. And I don't think it was a matter of not getting what they needed. I think financially, that was what they needed at the time. Many of my nurses had spouses that lost their jobs. And they were the sole breadwinner, and having the opportunity to make, as you know, it said between $10,000 and $20,000 in a week is very hard to turn away when you don't have, you have children and you have a lot of expenses and you don't have another breadwinner. So with all the things that were being said in the chat area, maybe some people could like to talk about that in the sense of the second question that we have that comes up. What are people doing, thinking, and feeling and aspiring towards when it comes to creating a caring organization? If we can bring those items in as well. And I see lots of hands up. I'm going to say Anne Marie, if you'd like to speak.
Good morning. I did a lot of thinking yesterday and last night, and I believe that nurses really want to feel as if they're invited to flourish. And those are where the organizations that I stayed at. I stayed in home health because I knew the leaders knew me. They knew what I knew. They knew what I could give the organization. They trusted me, they respected me, and I was able to navigate the system in terms of what I could do and couldn't do because they knew. So for example, in home health, they might have said, well, we expect you to see these 11 patients today. And I would look at the sheet, see where I would have to drive to, what kind of care I would have to give them. And then I would look at the supervisor and laugh and say, this is totally impossible. And I'm not doing this. And then I would just let them see what I would do. And you know what? Usually they said, okay, Anne-Marie, go for it. And they knew what kind of outcomes I would bring about. And nurses want to know that they are valued and respected for who they are and what they can give and not for what they can't give. At FAU, I was invited to be a clinical instructor. The same thing happened. I became I'm the past president of Sigma Theta Tau Iota Xi at large. Never expected to do that. Absolutely not. Thank you, Marlene. I thank Dr. King. I thank Charlotte Barry, because they let me flourish. And that's what nurses want to see. They want to be empowered. They want to be listened to. It's not always about the money. I left for a smaller amount of money sometimes, but I could be the nurse that I could be. And they want to be invited to flourish. Thank you.
Susie, see your hands up.
I just wanted to dovetail off of Barb again, because what she said did move me and it inspired me to say something. When Barb said she had to leave the practice, I just wanted to talk about how when I worked in 2 different units in practice, one was PACU and also in same day. And the same day, you did not get a potty break. You could have just as well had a catheter put in because there was absolutely no time, let alone lunch. But when you're in it with a team that there's a team leader, which every unit has, but a team that somebody's watching you and saying, did you get your break yet? Now, so that was run that way, that somebody is watching the team to make sure that everybody is cared for, to get their 15-minute breaks, to get their lunch break. And it's very simple, but that's what nurses can be drawn to, is that they will be cared for and somebody's watching to make sure they are cared for. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sorry, this is Victor. I'm thoroughly enjoying the conversation. The reflection is just quite deep. And I was looking at the comments and I was struggling a little bit with the comments because in some of the comments stated that nurses left in pursuit of money, and perhaps the environment in which they were working in was not providing them with what they needed to fulfill them as nurses. And then obviously I replied and others replied as well, where, you know, I see this a little bit differently. Many nurses, unfortunately, were faced with the reality of a pandemic, something that many, and probably most of us, have never even experienced. And they were maybe even the sole breadwinner for that household. I mean, tons of people lost their jobs, businesses closed. And so you had the nurse being the sole breadwinner. And unfortunately, because of our own financial constraints within our own institutions, we were unable to perhaps meet the money that was being offered by some of these agencies. So the nurses took that opportunity and went to earn higher wages somewhere else, but always knowing, because we've received these comments, that they always knew that they had a family at their place of employment. They felt that sense of family, but they had a personal commitment and responsibility, which is why they had to pursue, you know, higher wages somewhere else. And we tried everything we could by offering bonuses, offering incentive pays, you know, in different fashions, but still that really wasn't enough. You know, a family of 5, 6, 7 being held together by one nurse, it was very challenging. So, you know, when we sit here, I want us to just really reflect at what was the true driving force as to why some of these nurses left. And also just understand that many of them are coming back to us. And I know that someone mentioned, well, how are we going to handle that? How are we going to address that? Well, we're welcoming them back with open arms. You know why? Because they are still part of our family. We brought them into our culture, we embraced them, we helped them grow in their profession, and they know that they can come back to their family. And so as we talk about caring, that is really the essence of caring, is letting something go that you care about, knowing that they'll come back. And that's what we're seeing now. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to know that our nurses are returning. And we will continue to embrace that culture of caring, and we will continue to mold our environment so that we can provide them with what they need, would help them fulfill their wholeness in their profession. And I will also say that leaders within our organization, they frequently rounded during the pandemic, to the point where some of the leaders themselves came down with COVID. So that is even a truer expression of caring, to know that you're putting yourself out there for your teams, knowing what the risks were, but they still did it. So just wanted to share that with everyone. Thank you.
There's some beautiful things in the chat. Shirley just commented. Shirley, do you want to express us how they felt called?
Well, I'm just responding to some of my colleagues that I know felt called to respond as a nurse to areas that were experiencing very high numbers of patients with COVID. You know, watching it on the news night after night and knowing there was an extreme shortage of healthcare providers in general and the burnout that many of the nurses were experiencing, they felt called to leave. So money may have been part of it, but part of it may also have been for other reasons as well.
Absolutely.
There's some wonderful.
I just wanted to also add that many of our nurses come from other areas. Not everyone was born in Florida. So especially when they would see their hometown experiencing difficulty, they had an express need to respond.
There's many positive comments about your comments, Victor, and we really appreciate them. Coming to know the nurse as a whole person, coming to hear the story of the whole, not just as the work area in which this person is employed, or some of the comments that came out. Are there other comments about the vision then of what a caring organization would look like? How would
One.
Your
hands up.
Kathleen?
Yeah.
Hands up.
My hand was up. I just wanted to say something before we moved on, just to build on what Victor was saying. That somewhere in our text there was a quote, and I was trying to see exactly where it was, but I thought it was poignant, really, is that how we think about money and how we spend money, earn money, take in money, our relationship with money is a sacrament. And it just puts this on its head a bit. It's how we pay tribute to what we value. And I think that that's part of what we're hearing in some of these stories, is that we can't know what people's reasons, motivation, thinking is about the meaning of money or the meaning of finances within the choices that they make. And I thought it was interesting that someone framed it as a sacrament that pays tribute to what we value.
Hi, Mary. This is Ramel. If I could make a comment, I raised my hand in there. Yeah, I was reading Victor, and from experience, when I go to clinical to bring my students in the clinical, we're assigned. We don't opt out not to do that because we're afraid of contracting COVID in the hospital. We do it for caring as well. Same as nurses, they have their own motivations or reasons why they don't leave nursing in the beginning. Let's clarify this one. They don't leave bedside nursing. They shift to a different institution like a travel nursing where they offered higher wages, and they plan to come back after the COVID. It's an opportunity for them to do that. And it's caring on their part. I agree with Victor. And some of their nurses with a big difference in pay, and they belonging to different groups of social demographics, like the big difference in rate, you know what I mean? It's been a while that it's just been a problem, and there's an opportunity for them. And you speak to them while hearing their stories, you can see their motivations, like feeding their family. Victor's correct. They have like 5 children, and opportunity for them to travel. They miss their family. That's a sacrifice in their behalf. And most of them are very caring to the patients when they even a new environment for them, a new unit. So for me, let's respect their decision as well. But they feel in the need for that moment that some nurses would not agree to work on the COVID floor, or would not agree to work at all. They skip, they take vacations, long vacations, or whatever reasons they have. We cannot argue what the reasons would be. That's not caring, whatever it is. They're caring for themselves. They're protecting their loved ones at the home, like older adults, whatever it is. So that's also caring. And nurses also opted out to work for travel nursing. Is also caring for their family, for themselves, and financially. That's Dr. Gordon was correct. For being financially to secure for one's finances is also a caring for yourself. You know what I mean? You take a break from your work and you come back with an open arms to other institution. That's a caring for the other institution to do that for other nurses because they are part of our family. You know what I mean? So I am seeing that as clinical instructors, when we work in the COVID floor, when we work in the hospital, there are some COVID patients there that we see, even with assign our students. That's caring to protect our students. It's also caring for those nurses who have the what you call the courage to care for those COVID patients. So everybody cares in these different ways, but they are being paid differently. Now the question of disparity: did we offer the same opportunity for nurses who are already working in the hospital, so that they will stay there? Because if you are working in a COVID floor and those other nurses, travel nurses, working the same capacity and they're paid big difference, to me this is disparity. You know what I mean? That's where probably the question is that did we create an environment of disparity among our nurses? Because nurses did not create this opportunity for themselves. They just respond to the opportunity. So that's only my personal opinion.
Thank you. That was great, insightful. Someone coming on. I see a hand raised with Mary O'Connor.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I wanted to make an observation about this conversation that I think gets to the question of how do you create a caring environment in an organization. What I'm seeing and listening to is critical dialogue where multiple perspectives are welcomed, multiple perspectives are valued, and even invited. And I think that's really important. It might seem pretty basic, but I think it's pretty important to create a forum where that is so. I've been in lots of leadership councils where the chief leader suppresses conflict and differing perspectives. And I think that can be really damaging, especially when you have new leaders that are observing this kind of behavior and they feel like they can't really speak up without getting slapped down. So I think that we are kind of an embodiment of creating an organization where people feel safe. I think it is a safety issue. They feel safe to bring up a differing perspective from where the group seems to be going. That's it. Thank you.
Susie K, I see your hand is raised.
Oh, no, I need to take it down. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Can you restate your question, Mary Ellen?
In reflecting on what's already been presented, what can you envision that organizations can look like in integrating these caring qualities for an organization? Who needs to be at the table? What kind of conversation should we go forward and have? How do we invite flourishing?
I do want to bring up something. I look at Maroff, the book on caring, and this is 110 pages. And I'm wondering how many organizations have given this to their nurses? Because this little book will help with caring as flourishing in an organization. It's an amazing, amazing book on caring and a very simple read. So I bring that forward to bring caring into organizations and into academia.
This is Melissa. I don't know why it's not working. I think that it is very important. First of all, I'm very fortunate because my hospital is right across from Florida Atlantic University. And so a lot of our nurses have gone there for undergraduate or graduate. So very, very fortunate for that. But, you know, again, I want to get back to, I do feel that having very solid leadership for the nurses, having nurse leaders that have longevity, that really care and are invested in each other. I think they're better suited to display that caring to their team because there's so much personal investment. They know each other. And I have just seen in my 40-year career, nursing leadership teams that were not really connected, were basically, you know, out for themselves. And building that kind of team, and I'm sure, you know, Mary can also say that, you know, it takes a lot of time, and it takes expectations, and it takes guidance, and just emulating that. And I think it makes a big difference. I think it makes a big difference for the nurses on every day to have a leader there that they know is going to be there. They know is invested in them and their development and their education. And those to me are very caring, because you can just feel when you walk into a place or into a unit that, you know, every unit has their culture a little bit, but they care for each other so much. But it's really important that the leader cares, and every leader needs to care, especially the nursing leaders, because they have to care for each other too. So.
Melissa, I agree with you. This is Victor. Being present, being in the moment. One of our units, which is considered the COVID unit, was a remarkable example of what, you know, how a team comes together during adversity. And you know, this unit has not lost a single nurse throughout the entire pandemic. They've worked very, very well together, but also the leaders have been present constantly, rounding, being visible, taking the time to meet with staff one-on-one, asking, how are you? What do you need? How can I help? What support can we provide? And just having that presence means so much. Just knowing that as the bedside nurse has a busy day, busy shift, heavy load with patients, just knowing that that leader and that support team is there makes all the difference in the world. So, you know, as we ask ourselves, what can we do to make it a more caring environment, an environment that thrives during these difficult and challenging times, that's what we need to do. We just need to be present, be in the moment with our teams. And that may mean having to come in also at odd hours of the night for our night shift, buying them dinner, you know, celebrating their wins, recognizing how hard they're working, you know, putting up the boards with pictures of our staff members, and, you know, writing little cards to them, thanking them for what they do. If one of them gets sick, which some of them did, sending them flowers and sending them a get well basket at home. All of these things make a huge difference. And we did all that, and we've done all that, and we will continue to do all that. So those are some of the contributing factors to creating a caring environment.
Thank you, Victor. Those are really wonderful exemplars of reaching out and caring, expressions of caring, expressions of appreciation and acknowledgement. There's some questions going on in the chat about onboarding of new nurse leaders, the mentoring relationship, and how some new nurses are being placed in leadership roles, maybe with or without that mentoring. And I will add peer-to-peer support and expressions of caring to that list. Could maybe we discuss that? How do we respond to onboarding and mentoring new leaders?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think bringing on new leaders, that's what we definitely need. It's all about succession planning, right? And I think it also starts with opening up the opportunity for students who are in a leadership program. So let's start with them. Let's embrace the student. Let's provide them with the environment that they need to thrive as learners, so that when they graduate, they already have a commitment and perhaps a sense of engagement to your institution. So, and we do that with nursing students, undergraduate. We do that with, leadership, with informatics, any of our different tracks. But for the leaders, for the nursing executive students, I mean, that's a tremendous opportunity to get a feel for what type of environment they're going to be working in. So when you embrace them from day one, that starts to set the tone. And then when you onboard them well, you definitely want to pair them with a leader. And hopefully all of our leaders within our organization have a true buy-in to the organization and are part of the culture, right? Because you want to continue to share that with those new leaders who are coming on board. You don't want to pair them with a leader who says, oh gosh, I'm so tired of working here. I don't want to work here. I'm going to go find somewhere else to be. No, you want someone that truly knows what the culture is all about and understands what the expectations are as a leader. And so you also want to have guidelines. You want to set priorities. You want to provide them with what the expectations are of them as leaders, and introduce them to leaders, not just within nursing, but leaders throughout all the different departments within your organization. That's part of building that network. That's part of the strategic agility, is knowing who to go to, when to go to someone. So, you start to cultivate that type of environment so that they feel more welcome and more acclimated to their surroundings. I didn't say a lot yesterday, but I'm saying a lot today.
That is good. That is good. I see some hands up, but I'm not sure if these are hands up from people that forgot to take them down, or are they still up? But I'm looking at Shirley Gordon. You have your hand up. Are you there?
I do. And I just wanted to share, as I was listening to Victor's examples of extraordinary support during COVID, it reminds me of working in South Florida during hurricanes. And so my question is, how can we recognize the support that's given during disaster events like COVID and hurricanes, and continue to maintain that level of support or some level of support when the disaster is over? Because I always opted to work during hurricanes because it was such a community for all staff from all levels coming together. They provided food, people rounded, what do you need? Have you had a break? All of those kinds of things that Victor was describing. But how can we bring that to live every day and not just during disaster situations?
So I see, I don't know, Jalma, did you have your hand up again, or is that from prior questions?
That was from prior questions. I'll put it down.
All right.
I thought I did.
And all right. And Kathleen and Melissa, I also see hands up.
I just put something in the chat where I'm curious about those who are with us today who are not living in the United States or whose lived experiences outside of the United States. How do you imagine thriving, how caring is represented as thriving?
Okay, I can take that, I think. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen. For some reason, I'm not coming on.
We can see you.
We see you, Claire.
I hear you, Claire.
Okay, perfect. I can't see me.
And we can hear you.
Great. I can't see me, but I don't need to. So thank you, Kathleen. I think this pandemic has not only been and it's affected all of us, but it's very similar up here in Canada. Our nurses are exhausted. We don't have a travel nurse. We are, again, a publicly funded system. So for the most part, nurses don't jump from place to place because they're going to be getting the same amount of money. We do have what's called agency nurses, which I think may be similar, but we also, because of SARS, and Toronto was one of the core impact areas of SARS, and the most people affected and died were nurses and healthcare professionals. There was a decision that nurses could not work in more than one place. So that cut down on people working in different areas trying to make more money. I think I really want to echo what Victor is saying about not only saying we're caring, but modeling the way, walking the talk, being side by side. It's those caring moments. Throughout the conversation today, I've been thinking of how, I think Barb mentioned the cup of tea or sending the flowers. People may see that as just being kind. We all do that, but no, it is recognizing what is needed for these people and in that moment. And that is that caring piece, whatever they need at that time. And I really do think that the organization and our leadership need to demonstrate that to the nurses. We've talked about people going for more money and not having breaks. Well, I think also we need to leverage. Nurses have been in the forefront and highlighted. Now, I don't like the word hero because heroes are superpowers and they don't need to be paid. It's kind of like that term of angels. Suzanne Gordon used to say, great, we're angels, but angels are dead and they don't need a proper salary and they don't need breaks. So how do we create also those organizations where nurses can truly be in those caring moments? Because that's what I hope all of us wanted to be a nurse for, but it's because of the system issues and the complexity. So those caring moments are imperative. And last thing, the other piece that we've had in Canada, I'm not sure whether you have had, that many of the baby boomers such as I decided we've had enough and they retired during COVID. So we are in huge nursing shortages because of retirement, not shifting to travel nurses, but because of retirement. So I'll leave it at that for this time.
And is it possible for me to piggyback onto Claire? So I'm from Toronto as well. And I think for me, one of the other things that we're dealing with right now, or as we are, hopefully, the pandemic is ending, we have a lot of nurses who are currently in practice that actually do intend to leave when the pandemic is over. And so that's also going to contribute to our nursing shortage. But thinking about leadership, particularly during the pandemic, I think one thing that we haven't talked about is the concept of emotional intelligence for leaders. But certainly, you know, we need to have presence as leaders in our institutions. And I think another thing that has been on my mind this past 2 days is the notion of trust and the ability for the people that are our direct reports to be able to trust that we have their backs as well. And then the notion of communication and collaboration and really teams, building teams has been quite important during the pandemic. Thank you.
I am curious about Japan because I know right now Japan is not for you, Donald, but for we have members here from Japan, and I'm curious about caring and thriving and what that looks like in Japan.
Doesn't look like we're getting any responses from there.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
anyone else?
may
No,
have.
I think she's muted. She's
Yeah, I
muted.
think,
Maybe we have to
can
say.
you unmute?
Kathleen.
Can you unmute yourself, Oiko? You're muted. There you go. No,
No, we have no audio coming.
there you go. No. She's very high pitched, like a mouse again. Ben or John, can you think you can help her?
Yeah, it's probably best if you try and just leave the session and come back in. That should hopefully bring your mic back.
So can you send her a text in the chat to see if we can get her to do that?
Will do.
And I don't know if Tetsuya is on the call.
I see Tetsuya is.
There he is.
There he is.
Hello, sir.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, may I know what is the question about the talking? So, I cannot catch up the contents.
We were asking about what caring and thriving may look like in Japan. That was the question, but whatever you would like to contribute from your perspective.
Caring from the Japan's perspectives. So we have still in Japan, we have still a bad condition on the COVID-19. So especially the Tokyo and Nagoya and Osaka and the big town in Japan. So in there, so nurses and doctors, especially physician, have to taking care for the patient who suffered from the COVID-19. And then in there, so 1 year ago, we don't have correct diagnosis technique and correct and the medication for the patient. So in there, nurses caring, especially the listening voices patient who suffered from the COVID-19. So patient said fear and then anxiety. How do I treat from the COVID-19? So and then 1 week ago, so my friend Dr. Chao. So Dr. Chao joined 2 years ago this academies, and then he is a psychiatrist. And then he talked about the if we don't have medication, so nurses caring for the patient is the important medicine for the patient. So the listening voices from the patient is the big caring. So this is my idea to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. We're at the last seconds of our session together. It seemed to fly by, and I'm sure there's so much more to say. In just the second half, we heard about inviting multiple perspectives, creating an organization where people can feel safe, using Meyerhoff, being present, being in the moment, leaders being present by rounding and being visible, celebrating and giving expressions of appreciation, opening opportunities for graduates and new nurses to be introduced to leaders and others in the organization, working during disaster events. How do we approach any disaster? What people need at that time, highlighting nurses in a real way. Emotional intelligence for leaders, the notion of trust, having their back, building teams, understanding resources internationally. Thank you all so much. And I will summarize these. Thank you for your sharing. It was very thought-provoking.